35 past the hour. You are tuning your heart to the truth. I'm David Dawson along with Damian Collado and Gabby Smith. And in our studios, once again, he's returning guest, Don Moore. He's a Catholic businessman. When we had him on before, he'd written a book, What If Jesus Carried a Briefcase? And it was a delightful interview because you're one of the few people I know, and it's one of my passions, to where you can blur the lines between your Catholic faith and your work life. Why separate them so much? Right. And this is like a devotional, a weekly devotional of prayer for people who are in business.
Absolutely.
I just think that is fantastic. But then while we were doing the interview, you let me know that you are a brand new Catholic. And
yes.
You just celebrated an anniversary?
Yes, second year. I came into the church Divine Mercy Sunday 2 years ago.
My goodness, 2 years ago. So you still got the chrism on you, or on your forehead. So yeah, you got that. Well, what happened? How did this happen?
Well, it's my wife's fault.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I think I said it the last time. It would take longer than the segment, but about 10 years ago, my wife, we were Protestants, raised Protestants. You have cradle Catholics. We were cradle Protestants.
Both of you?
Yes.
Okay.
And about 10 years ago, maybe 11 now, she came to me and she said, I want to become Catholic. And it was devastating. And I didn't know how to react to that, so I'm sure I reacted poorly. But thank God she stayed, with her desire. And after some months of détente, I think, between us, I decided to do what I had been practicing off and on as a Protestant, which was to go off and pray and fast about her decision.
Okay.
And so I took all of my Protestant books that, told me all of the incorrect things about
things
Catholic
that were wrong
faith.
with us. Yes.
Yeah, and drank a whole bunch of coffee, and sat and prayed, and I had a very clear message that Jesus said, "I want your wife to be Catholic.
Really?
Get over it." So. So I went home and I said, okay, you can be Catholic. I can be a real sweetheart.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't know. I didn't know what that was going to entail because I had been married before.
Okay.
She had not. And she had been going through RCIA and got to that point where somehow through conversations or whatever, we had been married in the Methodist church, but she was not going to be able to come into the church because I hadn't gotten annulments. And
okay.
You talk about the only way I can tell you that I know God told me that my wife needs to be Catholic is for what the next year was like. So,
wow.
But anyway, I went through the, I had to get 2 annulments. Went through the annulment process not knowing anything about it. Learned a lot about it.
That's quite the experience, huh?
And people were telling us, it's going to be this length of time and whatever. And through it all, my beautiful wife was very stoic. And I would attend St. Anselm in Madisonville with her on Sundays. And then I would go to the Methodist church that I attended on Sunday evenings and play in the praise and worship band and continue to worship over at the Methodist church. And so I was, for several years, I was gaining insight into the Catholic Mass. But during this process, it was, let's say, cathartic. I decided not to be passive-aggressive about answering the questions in the annulment. That if that is what it was going to take for her to be Catholic, and I knew that God wanted her to be that, then okay. And so I think I wrote a book as thick as my book there. Deacon Abner, who was helping me, said, they don't usually get them that thick. I said, well, I got a lot to go over. So, and 1 year later, I got 2 annulments. Which was amazing because I'd purchased for my wife a trip to Italy. We were going to go through Rome and see all these things, and she was not yet in the church.
Right.
And the week before, days before we were to fly to Italy, I get the annulments in the mail. And so we call St. Anselm, talk to the priest and say, okay, everything's here. And said, well, not so fast. And I'm thinking, oh, my goodness sakes, my poor wife is just, but anyway, we went, and she's beautiful. And I'm talking to the priest and saying, yeah, so here's our marriage certificate from when we got married in the Methodist church by a preacher. And she's just, in her own world. And he says, well, how about Thursday? And I look over, and she's not hearing. I said, Elizabeth, he wants to know if you want to come into the church Thursday. And she's, yes. And so she takes her first communion at St. Anselm and her second one at St. Mark's in Venice, right? So,
how long ago was this?
4 or 5 years ago.
I mean, let's backtrack. What caused her to come into the Catholic faith?
Well, she'd have to tell you that. Okay. And she could probably do that very well. But then the second thing, and to make a long story short, is the Methodist Church was beginning to splinter. And so I began to question, what is it about the Protestant faith? If I'd not been born a Protestant, would I have chosen to be a Protestant? And so I did some deep and quiet study. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
Because there was every chance that I would elect to stay a Protestant. But, and my wife and I were already having some tension whenever a conversation about a scripture passage or something would come, and she'd bring a Catholic viewpoint. And and then I'd have to say, I'm not sure about that. And so I decided to do this quietly and embarked on ultimately what was about a 24-month in-depth study. Read the catechism fully. I read many books on belief. I challenged every one of the Protestant assertions and ultimately came to believe that the Catholic Church was more reasonable in its doctrine.
Okay.
I had gone to a Manresa 2 years earlier, and I'd talked to a very wonderful priest there, and I'd asked him, what about a guy like me? Because by this time my wife was Catholic and my 4 daughters were Catholic, and so we used to be Methacats, but now it was Catholics and me. And I said, what about me? I said, I can't get my head around every doctrine, because this was early in my discernment.
Sure.
And he said, well, look, God doesn't call people away from things. They call you toward. Jesus will call you toward something. So if you're getting all your spiritual needs met in the Methodist Church, there's nothing wrong with that. Well, that was a good answer, but on a deep level, it was the right answer in that I did feel like I was being called toward something, not away from something.
Okay. Did you feel like your needs spiritual? It doesn't sound like you were. Your spiritual needs were getting met in the Meth. So that's why you were gravitating towards the Catholic faith?
I think that the antiquity of the Catholic Church is always compelling.
Okay.
And then my studies of the Protestant Reformation was more about people not liking the Pope. And so kingdoms of the earth coming up and taking what they liked out of the church that existed, because it was all Catholic at one time.
That's right.
And I said, well, that's silly. I mean, and then the final, I think, defining moment, in addition to setting up all of the doctrinal differences, was the Catholic faith accepts all of the other beliefs because it's one true God. And all of the other beliefs don't accept
the Catholic. That's exactly
and
right.
I'm thinking that has got to be
that's interesting.
A reason to say, I don't know what the segment ends on, but my wife and I were having a conversation about Joe Biden.
Oh, boy. Well, I tell you what, let's do this. We're going to go ahead and take a break. We're going to continue. We're going to continue with this, thank goodness, and come back with that. So, all right, it is 44 past the hour on Wake Up. We'll be back with Don Moore.
Hi, I'm Chad Olivier, certified financial planner, CEO of Olivier Group. My wife Rose and I and our 4 sons are parishioners of St. George Catholic Church. Olivier Group was founded in 2002 with the goal of helping families with all aspects of financial planning to protect your family. We do this by using a team approach with a personal touch, always acting in the client's best interest. Life by design, not by default. Visit our website at oliviergroup.com.
Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC, member FINRA, SIPC, CWM, LLC, and SEC Registered Investment Advisor.
Hi, this is Chef Tony Montalbano from Two Tony's Restaurant in the historic West End area of Lakeview. I'm a proud supporter of Catholic Community Radio. I'd like to welcome you personally to enjoy my family's restaurant and enjoy some of the Creole Italian dishes that have been in my family for generations, like our great local Gulf seafood, house-made soups and sauces, or one of our Sicilian marinara favorites. That's Two Tony's Restaurant out in the West End area, 8536 Pontchartrain Boulevard, where Pontchartrain Boulevard meets the lake, 282-0801.
Hey, New Orleans, this is John Blanchard with the Rock and Roll and Yale College Inn, right across the street from Notre Dame Seminary on scenic Carrollton Avenue, where the rebirth of post-Katrina New Orleans is literally in full bloom. When's the last time you've been to College Inn? It's always been a favorite meeting spots for generations of New Orleanians. Have you seen our beautiful gardens next door where we grow fruit and vegetables that grace our dishes and libations? Did you know that College Inn is the home of the New Orleans Prep Hall of Fame, where our local legends and their exploits grace the walls? Did you know we still have our old favorites, but now Chef Baker Guevara oversees award-winning cuisine? Did you know that College Inn and Rock and Bowl offer the largest restaurant entertainment venue in New Orleans, covering over 100,000 square feet? Did you know that the Sacred Heart of Jesus and Immaculate Heart of Mary are enthroned at your College Inn? It's one-stop dine and rock. No need to drive around to multiple locations. Park free, walk the gardens, eat a great meal, and then rock and bowl. Rock and Bowl and College Inn, one stop, dine and rock.
I'm Ian Malosson with River Road Coffees. We're proud to support Catholic Community Radio across the Gulf South. Our coffee wakes up the staff every morning and keeps them going throughout the day so they can deliver the freshest Catholic content and news to you. You'll also find us at many Catholic Community Radio events. River Road Coffees at your local grocer or visit riverroadcoffees.com for home delivery.
Has your coffee become lukewarm? Well, for about $1 a day, you can crank up the heat with the Catholic Community Media Coffee Club. As a member, you'll get a stainless steel insulated tumbler that keeps your coffee piping hot. But even better, you'll help us spread the good news like wildfire all along the Gulf Coast, with content from EWTN, Ave Maria Radio, and our own original content. Don't settle for lukewarm. Help us set the world on fire. Visit joincoffeeclub.com.
12 minutes before the top of the hour. Welcome back to Wake Up. Damian Collado, David Dawson, also Gabby Smith, and our guest in studio, Don Moore, a Catholic businessman with a book out called What If Jesus Carried a Briefcase? But more importantly, this is part 2 of our Conversion Corner segment for this week. And Don, you were touching on a story regarding Joe Biden. Share that with us.
Yeah, so it's not going to be a political commentary, but this was again before I had converted, and one of those moments where my wife and I were having conversations. And so the Protestants were up in arms about Joe's beliefs on abortion and different things at the time, and how was he, getting communion? And at that time, what did I know? Right, but I was Protestant, and it was, how does your faith let this happen, and so forth? And she was serenely sitting there, and she says, well, our faith says when you go and take the blood and the wine, you're drinking that on yourself. If you're not, where your heart needs to be. And I stormed out of the house and was going to work, and I was not out of the neighborhood. And I started to laugh, and I called her up, and I said, honey, you won't believe it. Joe Biden made me a Catholic.
that was your conversion moment at that very point in time. No, not quite. But
not quite.
Touch on that. It's evident that you liked to study your religion, your faith.
Yes.
Did a lot of research.
Yes.
When it came to going to RCIA, you finally had to make that commitment.
I didn't go to RCIA.
You did not go to share that story.
So, well, my book
because
is
most Catholics who convert.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
and not everybody has gotten your book, so you got to tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I had read the Bible many, many, many times.
Okay.
And I had taught long-term Bible studies. I was a Stevens minister. I had preached at the church that I was at. I knew what the doctrine of the Protestant church was, and I knew how to address the issues that were different in the catechism. And I read the catechism all the way through, and I read Lumen Gentium, and I was reading all of this stuff again quietly, because there was a chance I wasn't going to convert, and I didn't want that to be a further barrier between me and my wife. The deacon who helped me through the annulment process had gotten to know me and to know the depth of my understanding of theology, that I was well-formed as a Protestant. So we had conversations at the time that I had called him and said, look, it's time for me to come on. There's no reason for me not to become Catholic. I believe everything that the Catholic Church teaches. And the adult formation person at Mary Queen of Peace, Father John, who is now Bishop John in Atlanta, I was, people met with me, talked about things enough to know that I wasn't going to learn anything new in RCIA, but I was willing to do that. I was willing to get annulments, for goodness sakes. I was going to go sit through the RCIA class.
Right. You probably knew more about the Catholic faith than most Catholics at the time.
That's, I don't know that I would ascribe to that, but that was what people, would tell me, because it was fresh, it was new. I mean, people that have read the catechism probably haven't read that in 20 years, but I had just read it. And so I was invited in, and I came in on Divine Mercy Sunday, which was, I was told by the church that was historically when baptized people came into the church. Easter Vigil was for those who were new, had not been either baptized or had not had another faith practice or whatever. And so I came in. Father John, who's now Bishop John, brought me in. It was only me that day. And there's a saying I used to say in Kentucky, I had a 9-pound smile on my face when I walked through.
I like that.
So were there any hang-ups before you made that final commitment to becoming a Catholic? Because a lot of Protestants have trouble with Mother Mary.
Yeah, Mother Mary was one, but she was, when I had gone to Manresa and I was having this conversation with the priest there, principally I said my issue is with Mother Mary. I don't know, that could be a hang-up. How could I profess everything that the church teaches if I couldn't, profess everything, not knowing what everything was that they taught, but thinking that I knew everything they taught and taught? And he said, no, it probably wouldn't get in your way. But he said, why don't you, at this retreat, why don't you just begin to meditate on Mary and try to come up with a list of things that you admire about her? Well, and so that was a start. That was in 2020, I think, when I had gone to Manresa, and so I started to do that. I had many, many, many things, including a sign in a dream. We don't have to go into that, but there were so many things. But the real presence was early. That one was an easy one to take.
Okay.
The role of the Pope, that was an easy one to take. And they just started to fall. And as my wife used to say when she was a Protestant, someday if you get to heaven, Mary's going to be there, and you don't want to have not been nice to Jesus's mama.
And we all want to love our mamas, right?
So, I said, okay, maybe I better study on that a little bit.
We got about a minute left. What would you say to someone who is on the fence and is possibly entertaining converting to the Catholic faith?
Well, I think it's important to know what you believe. And so then you can do the comparison. So many of us are raised one way or the other, and we don't have to take a stand. But if your wife says, I want to become Catholic, and you're a Protestant, then now all of a sudden you're involved.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So it wasn't, I could have lived my life as a Protestant, I think, but my wife wanted to become Catholic. God wanted her to become a Catholic, and maybe he wanted me to become, but I came along as lagniappe. So,
Well, and you mentioned
You thought at the
you
time.
mentioned your 4 children are Catholic as well. That happened right after your wife became Catholic?
yeah, we homeschool and we were following the Catholic curriculum, and so maybe it was just all set in stone.
So the
but,
foundation was laid by Mama, and
Yes,
then
indeed.
everybody else followed.
Beautiful.
yeah.
You know, that's beautiful. Well, Don, thank you for much for sharing your story. It's a great story, and boy, we'd love to have you back in the future for more than one reason. But I just love to hear your stories about your faith and some encounters. Now that you are Catholic, I'm sure there have been some close moments, as they say.
Yes, I love to talk about Jesus.
There you
Amen, brother. Okay, well, that's Don Moore, a Catholic businessman and author of the book, What If Jesus Carried a Briefcase? It's really entertaining. If you are a business person, this book is for you because it's a great devotional, and it's a month by month. You can't go wrong with it. That's all. I'll leave it at that.